Hi everyone, and welcome to Commissioning Conversations Live. My name is Alice Redmond and I am a Senior Media Researcher at Broadcast Intelligence, and today I am joined by three of the biggest names in factual entertainment commissioning to discuss what comes next for the genre. But just kind of before we get started, I wanted to give a little bit of background for those of you who are not already subscribed to Broadcast Intelligence's Commissioner Index. So the Commissioner Index is the only place where you can find profiles on commissioners from the UK, US and the SVODs. And we just got a little bit up here. We give you the lowdown on who, what, when and where to pitch. And so if you watch this session and you think that you fancy letting Lawrie or any of the 449 other commissioners or Hilary or Catton know your latest idea, you'll be able to find a detailed summary of what they're looking for, not looking for, how they like to be pitched, and so much more. And we're also here today due to the report we have out on the future of factual entertainment. We've interviewed the top commissioners, including the three joining me today, to give you an outline of what's in store for the future of the genre. CI Pro subscribers will receive this report today, and everyone else can find links see more about the report and the Commissioner Index in the chat section of this webinar. So let's get started on our panel. So joining me today, we have Catton, who is Head of Popular Factual and Factual Entertainment at the BBC, Lawrie, who is Head of Factual Entertainment at Channel 4, and Hilary Rosen, who is Deputy Director of Commissioning and Head of Factual and Factual Entertainment at UKTV. And across the panel, we have seen some amazing hits, from Taskmaster to The School That Tried to End Racism, The Sewing Bee to Big Zoo's Big Eats, and lockdown programming galore, including the likes of Gardener's World and Richard and Judy's Book Club. So welcome everyone, it's really lovely to have you here with us.
Hello.
Right. And I think what would be like a really great place to start, if you could all outline what you are most looking to be pitched currently. So maybe if we start with you, Hilary, what is your top of your wish list at the moment?
I think what we're really keen to try more of are formats on W. We've had a lot of success with shows that are sort of based in the real world, things like Inside the Ambulance and Emma Willis Delivering Babies. But actually, what I think we need now are some formats that take us away from the real world and some of the very real stresses and strains that we're all, that exist because of COVID, etc. And trying to find some sort of formats in familiar territories, things like maybe dating or, food and things like that, but trying to find formats that can take us away from the real world and that are also COVID protected. So I would say that's probably on W, top of our wish list, and then on Dave, comedy entertainment outside of the studio.
Ooh, very nice. And how about you, Catton? What are you looking for at the moment?
Yeah, so we're commissioning at the moment across BBC 1, 2 and 3. So I would say that for BBC 1, the focus is on Factent. So we're looking for big shows that could be closed ep or competitive. They could be celebrity driven, they could be contributor driven, but something that feels like it could be a bit of a roadblock in the schedule. So I think about what that appointment of you could look like and how it's stripped or how that could feel. Also for BBC 1, obviously we've got Freddie on bulimia coming up, and we've had a huge amount of success with docs in that sort of space so far. So I think more things where we're looking at household names who are talking about a real, a very broad and relatable issue is thinking about adventure. I can talk about that more. And then for 3, we are looking to land more reality shows. So we're probably not as keen on dating or relationships. And we've got a few things that aren't announced yet. And obviously we've got the rap game, but yeah, looking for more reality.
Perfect. And Alf, how about you, last but not least?
Probably a similarly sort of broad list to Catton, really. I mean, obviously Factent Channel 4 spans a huge range, so if you're going to email me this afternoon, it is as vague as the dream, obviously, being the next channel defining new format, which can take many forms, and it could be at a sort of poster-sized, jaw-dropping level of, The Island and Hunted and Married at First Sight, kind of audacious premises and extraordinary constructs, or it could be slightly less poster-sized, but equally sort of distinctive pieces if you think of things like Undateables or Child Genius, you know, which opened up new areas of content and were really loved and channel defining in their own ways. So returnable formats, of course. And then for next year, a couple of pieces of big sort of factual theatre. In the past, we've done things like Smuggled or 60 Days on the Streets, looking at our borders and homelessness. And this year, as you say, The School That Tried to End Racism, or last night's The Write-Offs, kind of pieces which try and explore important topical things and what are the issues next year that we should be foregrounding is my question. And then secondly, can we sort of explore them in dramatic or unexpected ways? And if it can't be unexpected or dramatic, it probably wouldn't necessarily come from us. So if you think of something like global warming, I would love to do something about global warming, but how can we bring something audacious or unexpected to it is the question for us. And if anyone knows, please write to me this afternoon.
And I was just wondering, for across all of you, how much of your strategy at the moment is kind of a business as usual, we're ignoring any of the global pandemic things, and how much of it has been shaped by what you've been able to produce the last 6 months and what's the events of the past 6 months?
Who do you want to go?
Yeah, I was going to say this a bit harder on Zoom to be. Catherine, you look like you were starting.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there is any business as usual anymore. It certainly doesn't feel like it. I think, you know, we started off when all of this hit 6 months ago. We started off thinking. We immediately went incredibly public service, as you would expect us to. So it was, how do we keep Gardens Well going? How do we keep Countryfile going? Because suddenly those things felt incredibly important. And then so there was a focus on getting those up and running. Then there was thinking about, okay, what can we turn around incredibly fast that's going to provide a bit of sparkle into the schedule? So, you know, that was, to all intents and purposes, compilation shows. So we did a Miss Adventures from My Sofa, we did, you know, some Chelsea, we, you know, did a few things like that. But then quite quickly it became much more about, okay, we need to just get going again. So how do we do that? So we had a lot of shows that had already been commissioned, that it was just about thinking about, okay, how do we make them now, and how do we do this in a safe way? So we quite quickly went into production with the Nadia series that's on at the moment, with Celebrity Best Home Cook, with More Sewing Bee, with the Rap Game, Interior Design Masters. So there was a lot that got up and running quite fast. And I guess now it's about thinking about the longer view, the big picture. You know, we've still got a huge job to do in terms of connecting younger, broader, diverse audiences with the BBC. And so we have to meet the immediate challenges that are literally staring us all in the face every day, but we also need to take that longer term view. So it's about, you know, it's as any broadcaster will be, it's about being agile at this moment and constantly trying to adapt to what's immediately in front of us.
And I know, Hilary, your UKTV are taking a completely different outlook just by nature of who you are as a broadcaster. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
I think if you're referring to the fact that we didn't commission shows,
yeah.
I mean, to Catherine's point, you know, we're not a public service broadcaster, we're an entertainment network, we're a repeats business, so that's not our job, and that's not what people come to our network for. I mean, we did, you know, we are you know, we obviously build on our brands, and actually, you know, we've got some Meet the Richardsons coming through, Christmas special and another series, and that will reflect the kind of lockdown world that we live in. But what we didn't do was make sort of Zoom shows, because that's not how our schedule works. But we have commissioned Emma Willis delivering babies in 2020, which is a really, really specific look at the way in which babies were being delivered without partners in hospital, and Emma was desperate to get involved, and, you know, she's really passionate about the NHS, but she wasn't allowed into hospitals, neither were partners. And actually they were filming, you know, she was connecting with them on Zoom, they were filming their births with UGC, and she was connecting them with them in the real world afterwards. So we have done a little bit of shows that reflect the world that we're in, but actually I think there's also audience fatigue, and I think probably broadcasters would agree with that. I mean, I think as we hit this next winter period and we go through the next 6 months of more restrictions on our lives, I think what we feel is the real focus should be on joyful, entertaining shows which can take us out of that space, because we don't need to respond to the real world as it hits us. So a lot of what we're doing is thinking about how do we take, for example, comedy entertainment out of the studio. That's a big conversation that we're having at the moment. And we've got some really exciting shows in development where people have really thought hard and long about what are the elements of comedy entertainment that really work for people, what is it they love about it, and how do you switch that conversation and that sort of that form of comedy on location without it being a travelogue. So that's kind of space to watch for us.
Very interesting. And Alf, how about you? Is there
So,
how much?
I mean, yeah, I mean, the answer to your question is it isn't business as usual, but we're trying as forcefully as we can to make it as close to that as possible. So, I mean, if you think of something like Celebrity Hunted, you know, when can we film that again? You know, nobody knows. It's really tough. Or Married at First Sight, we've got a series coming to air in a fortnight. We had 4 couples ready to marry, and weddings became illegal before 2 of them had married. So it's had a really quite devastating and profound effect on a huge number of titles. Having said that, you know, Factual is very exposed in one way, because a lot of our work is throwing people together to have kind of crazy adventures and new experience, new things, and often groups of strangers together. But it is also, there is a kind of, it's uniquely protected in another way, which is that often we can actually insulate our shows from the outside world. You can continue to make Bake Off. And there are a lot of things, Naked Attraction, the perfect lockdown show, everyone in their own little pod. And the same with The Circle. And there's a lot of Factual actually that is bizarrely invulnerable or largely immune from this pandemic. What I would say is, as a channel, I want to sort of reassure producers. You know, I've seen some of the comments in the broadcast articles about a second lockdown. As a channel, obviously, we're all working together. All the PSBs are working together with the DCMS to protect filming. And very early on, it was agreed that filmmakers were essential workers. And that wasn't just the news, it was everything, including Factual. Gogglebox production team had letters saying they're essential workers, because the government has recognised that TV is, in a sense, an essential service. So the government advice at the moment is, if you can work from home, work from home. But if you can't work from home, go to work. And our advice, you know, we're always looking for interpretation, obviously, you know, awaiting clarification or changes. But we are working to the principle that TV crews can work, and they can work in people's homes, just as an electrician can come into your house, or the gas man can come into your house at the moment. A TV crew can come into your house. And as much as possible, and we're continuing to work with government, we are trying to keep the show on the road where we can, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to. And TV is not spreading this virus, right? I mean, we're one of the safest industries. We're so regulated, the way we've thought through all of our protocols. So I feel hopeful that where there's a will, there's a way, and some of the lockdown measures, I hope we will remain able to navigate, basically. But it's obviously, you know, the practicalities have become very, very difficult. In terms of what we're seeking to commission, the editorial, I think it's probably true to echo what Hilary says. There's definitely a sort of an emphasis on joy and fun and escapism, but that doesn't colour the whole output, right? So the next 60 days on the streets, or whatever it might be, from as far as we're concerned, we're still looking for the breadth of Factual, but possibly there's a slight shift in emphasis in places.
Yeah, and just touching on kind of what you were just speaking about, you know, Factual has kind of almost proved itself to be quite resilient as a genre in terms of things like Bake Off being able to bubble and things like that. And I just wondered if any of you could shed some light on why you think that is.
From the audience's point of view, or from the contributor's point of view?
From like being able to, Factual as a genre has been being able to have setup shoots. They've been able to do Bake Off. We've been able to do things. Do you think there's anything within the genre, such as the certain subject matters or the way things are filmed, that are of a benefit to it?
I mean, I think it's fair to say that all genres are up and running to a degree. I mean, it's just some are easier
Yeah.
to be up and running than others. I mean, we've got, you know, we've got scripted shows in pre-production that are getting ready to film. I know that other broadcasters are already filming scripted pieces. I think, you know, to Alf's point, you know, we have the most extraordinary set of protocols. As an industry, we've all come together and we've worked incredibly hard to work out how we can carry on making television, whether it's news or factual entertainment or scripted, and all of those genres will deliver some versions of the shows. Look at the soaps. But I think with Factual, I mean, you know, you can re-skin the way you do things. I mean, Bake Off is a case in point. We've all been reading about how you set up those shoots and how you bubbled everybody, how you can have a format, you can have an idea, and there are always workarounds, there are always ways that you can reimagine making shows. And I think one of the things that's been most sort of impressive is how adaptable both the producer community have been. I mean, they've been extraordinary in their sort of endeavours and rolling their sleeves up and really thinking strategically and creatively about how they can carry on making their shows. But also contributors. You know, it's fascinating how actually you know, I hate that phrase, the new normal, but suddenly you can find all these people who are now completely up for working in it. You know, we are very, very adaptable. That's, you know, that's got to be of some reassurance.
Definitely. I mean, it's sort of the nature of the genre, isn't it? Is that a lot of the shows, not all of them, but like a large number of them, are constructed and artificial. They're things we've come up with ourselves. And so, in a sense, you know, that's, you know, if you're making a documentary, you're in the real world. It's about the real world, and if the real world is locked down, that's hard. Whereas Factual tends to be creating slightly self-contained artificial situations just by the nature of the genre, and in that sense, you know, a lot of it can continue even through quite stringent regulations that affect the real world, as it were.
And I think to Hilary's point as well, you know, I think that one of the things that has been incredibly impressive is just how unbelievably talented and resilient and creative the entire indie community that we work with, and I know other broadcasters work with too, in terms of just really very quickly getting across a vast amount of health and safety protocol and managing to turn it into something that is going to end up making something that people might actually want to watch. So I think that's just been extraordinarily impressive, and it's testament to the indie community that we've got so many shows up and running so fast.
And Alf, you touched on that, on these constructive environments, and I promise this will be one of the last questions about that relate to COVID, because I know we're all a little bit sick of it. But obviously, you know, these constructed environments are COVID proof. Do any of you think that there's an increased need for those types of pitches, or do you think that it's all, you need that as part and parcel instead?
No, I think in the short term, it's definitely worth thinking about. I mean, as I say, we're trying to find ways to keep filming in the real world and keep filming in people's houses and keep the show on the road as much as we can. But in the short term, it is definitely thinking about if Celebrity Hunted can't be filmed next year because you know, the virus is still out there and jumping into strangers' cars is ultimately a bit too high risk. What is the show that will replace that? So it's definitely worth thinking about.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. I mean, comedy entertainment, because that's such a big part of what we do on Dave, and those shows require audiences. It's really hard to film a studio show without an audience, because comedians really need that audience to feed off, and they don't really work without them. So that was our very one of our very first and very immediate concerns was, what, you know, once we'd really figured out that you really couldn't get an audience in at that time. And then we started to think about, okay, well, how do you create that experience outside of the studio? And a lot of the stuff that comedians do outside of the studio tends to be travelogue, not exclusively, but often for very good reasons. And there are lots of very good versions of those shows around. So we then set ourselves a challenge: well, what can you do with comedians that will be very entertaining and potentially competitive that isn't a travelogue. And we briefed out quite specifically on that. And as I said earlier, we've had some really good and really imaginative ideas back, and we're now, really seriously developing a few, several of those ideas. And I think actually we may look, if we get it right, we may look back on this and think, God, that ended up being weirdly an opportunity for us to rethink how we do things and rethink the kinds of shows. I mean, in the end, what the audiences want, as Catherine said, they just want to be entertained. We have to go through these very hard and complex and difficult processes, and then you put it on the telly and it has to look effortless and it has to be fun or thought-provoking, depending on what your ambition is for your show. But the audience just have to feel the joy and feel the pleasure, and just getting to that point where everyone could feel optimistic about even making shows again, and how they would feel joyful and fun has been a bit of a process. But we're quite some months through now, and I think we're all, in all genres, finding a new way of doing things, but that might last beyond COVID.
Yeah, I mean, one sort of silver lining possibly of this extremely dark, unpleasant cloud is also, it's interesting how the Zoom thing has sort of made geography less relevant, and it should never have been relevant, but obviously the energy is different, isn't it? If you get on a plane and have to fly to Channel 4 to have a meeting there, for example, back in the days from Glasgow. I mean, since obviously we've opened our offices to address that, but it has been interesting how it's just cut out geography completely, and you can meet with anyone at any time, and that's, I don't know, I felt like that probably is quite refreshing and hopefully quite healthy thing that will stay with us, after hopefully this virus is past us.
Definitely. I think a lot of producers have definitely said that there's been a lot of greater access to you guys throughout all of this, which I think is really definitely, like you said, a positive. Yeah. And moving on slightly, funding and finance, which is a hot topic of the moment. There's no denying that tariffs are something that usually on these panels we ask a question and say, what's your tariff? And everyone says, I'm so sorry, I can't talk about that. We're all a little bit tight-lipped. But I wondered if, considering how much of a hot topic it is at the moment, any of you were able to talk us through your current tariffs and what they're looking like, or just how you're funding things recently, because I know everyone's trying different models and trying new ways at the moment.
I mean, look, all of the conversations, and I always say this on every single panel, all of the conversations always start around the idea. And if, it's an incredible idea and we love it, then more often than not, we'll fully back it. But equally, having said that, of course, we're looking at more co-production. Of course, we're having conversations about third party. But it's got to start with the idea. And that's what we're after, is things of scale. So, we need to fund them.
Hilary, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues, is that we paused a lot of shows for very good reason, and our ambition primarily was to start those shows up again. We had a big responsibility to those ideas, those producers, to get those shows back into production. That's created a bit of a backlog. There is more money coming through next year. And more money again for the year following that. But I think there are less opportunities in 2021 than there would have been but for COVID. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for us. It's extremely frustrating for producers, but the opportunities are there. And like all broadcasters, we continue to think about clever and creative ways of partnering, third party, deficit funding, AFP, all of these are, we are thinking constantly with our programme finance team about other ways to finance shows so we can get as many shows on TV as possible within our budgets. I mean, tariffs, we don't really have tariffs as such. I mean, but, for every broadcast, it does start with the idea. It really does start with the idea. And that's not just the bullshit that people speak on these panels. When people come with really good ideas or amazing pieces of talent or something that just gets everyone excited, then we will move, heaven and earth to try and secure that talent, that show, that idea, etc., etc.
Yeah, would echo all of that. I mean, yeah, obviously we've lost money from our budget, particularly this year, less so next year. There's no, I'm afraid it's sort of the same. I mean, maybe it sounds vague, but the tariffs go from 100k to 600k on our slate, and it really does depend on the idea. I would say the thing that is probably the most vulnerable is the sort of expensive middle, if you see what I mean. And you know, the things where if they're huge poster-sized ideas, we still have ring-fence money and want to make those and buy those. And where there are clever economies and clever co-pros and things you can do at volume cheaply that you think will still rate and work and do well, we're keen to keep an eye on those. I guess it's to look for those. It's sort of expensive, sort of ish shows in the middle zone, I would say, are sort of the most vulnerable in a way.
Interesting. And obviously we have done this panel today because we're talking about the future of factual entertainment in our new report. So I wanted to know what your opinions are on what is the future for factual entertainment. I know we've asked you this before for the report. You know, how do you think it's the TV industry as a whole, the genre as a whole? How do you think factual entertainment is going to fare in the future? Don't know if you want to start, Catherine.
Well, I suppose from a BBC point of view, as a genre, it's really important in terms of how we are going to connect with a broader, younger audience. And you know, we know that audience are out there. We know that they engage with that kind of content. We see them engaging with it elsewhere. So it's really critical from that point of view. And I guess, everything that this year has brought and the attendant pressures that has brought upon you know, drama and comedy, then there's going to be more emphasis around Fact 10. So it is important. And I guess as well, in terms of future of that slate, for me it's about just keeping the breadth and the diversity across that slate. So at one end of it, you know, we've just commissioned Idris with Fight School, you know, and the other end, you know, we have, you know, Your Garden Made Perfect, and we've got, you know, Ramesh and Sarah in between. So there, you know, we've got things that feel that they're quite underpinned by big issues and feel quite sort of that they've got sort of big social issues at the heart, and there are things that feel that they're much more entertainment driven. So I'd hope that we would continue that breadth. And I guess, you know, the diversity is also really important. You know, we are, you know, from as of, you know, this summer, we're not taking ideas. I'm not taking any ideas into controller meetings unless, you know, the team have had a sensible conversation with the indie about how they're going to start it up in a diverse way, and all of those things are sort of being talked about. So, you know, with more diversity come better ideas, come a richer and broader slate. So yeah, so I feel positive about the future. I really do. But obviously, I mean, this year I'm over it. But you know, it's from a slate point of view, it's exciting. But this year has been really tough for everybody.
And how about you, Alf at Channel 4?
Well, I'm going to boringly echo Catherine's comment. I mean, look, you know, fundamentally people are interesting, aren't they? And if you put them in interesting and unusual circumstances, they will continue to be interesting. So, I mean, for me, it's an evergreen, perennially fascinating genre, and it will ever be that. It's like, it's great. I mean, obviously I love it. That's why I'm a acting commissioner. So I have no fears for its long term, you know. And you look at the next sort of big idea. I loved Love Is Blind, owing an homage of debt as it did to Married at First Sight, but with an audacious twist, and continue to strive for audacity myself, and long may it continue. But yeah, I think Factual is in rude health, and as we've discussed, you know, does have kind of security from the bloody lockdowns, which is helpful.
And how about you, Hilary?
I think, look, one of the virtues of this genre is it's very nimble and it's very cost efficient. So, you know, if you compare this genre to scripted, you might be in script development, you know, something that you come in and have a meeting with a commissioner about may not hit the screen for 2.5 years. That's normal. That's not sluggish. That's just the nature of that process. You can come in to a commissioner with a fact ent idea. You can turn it around in less than a year. You know, it could be on screen 6 months later. I mean, it could be on screen 3 months later if it was something that felt very time sensitive. So that's, and it's some of the biggest successes in this genre, Come Dine With Me and things like that. Those are not expensive shows. So it's not something where you have to spend a lot of money on, like a Shiny Floor, Saturday night show, which is a big, big bet that you're taking on a format with a lot of attendant cost. We can afford to take risks. And actually, what's interesting is when you look back at some of the biggest and best titles that have been around for the longest, some of them started quite small. They were quite small shows that have grown and grown and grown in their sort of scale and ambition, because the audience can really connect with our shows, because, as everybody's been saying, they're about the everyday, they're about the stuff that we do, whether it's cooking or sewing or baking or dating or getting married. I mean, they're just the stuff of every day. So the genre is whatever we want it to be, whatever our own sort of preoccupations are as a society can be reflected back at us on screen, and the cleverest producers will come up with the best and most entertaining ways of feeding all of that stimulus, if you like, back at us for us to enjoy. I think it's in a very good place, ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. That's reassuring for everyone that's watching to hear. And speaking of those brilliant producers that have got brilliant ideas, we do have a few questions that have been pre-submitted. So our first one was asked to be asked anonymously, and it's from a producer at Regional Indie. They've made an impressive amount of programs for a regional channel, but haven't broken into kind of the likes of your channel at all yet. They have a subscription as well to the Commissioner Index. They know kind of what everyone's looking for, and they know how to get their contact details. But they really want some advice on how they get their foot in your door. How do they start a relationship? Is the fact that they've only made regional programming a disadvantage to them? I just wondered if you had any advice for them on how to get their foot in your door.
I think all the channels are different, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of Channel 4, it's very open, so our email addresses are on the website, and you can email any of us at any time, and we will respond to you in a week, hopefully. That's the aim, and definitely do our best. And I mean, look, if you sent me an idea that appealed, your background wouldn't be a barrier. Obviously, if you've never made a show of the kind you're proposing to make, we'd think about how we'd staff it together and work out, if you needed to get some skills in or whatever it might be. But the idea is first and foremost, so there's no reason not to send it over this afternoon, especially if it's one of the first two things that I asked for at the beginning of the meeting.
And how about you, Hilary?
Listen, send in a good idea. People email us all the time. People I've never heard of email us all the time from small indies all over the country. We reply to everyone. I'd like to say within a week. I probably couldn't be held to that. We certainly try to respond as soon as we can. A good idea is a good idea, and we've all, I'm sure, as commissioners, received really outstandingly good ideas from people that we occasionally, we just think, wow, that's a really interesting idea. I don't really know that much about you. I don't really know that much about this idea, but this top line looks really compelling. I mean, a good idea will get you quite far. I mean, I think it's incumbent on us as commissioners to make sure that producers don't fail. So if we feel, if we were to feel that you were too small to make that show because you haven't got any, you haven't proved yourself yet in that space, then it's down to us to partner you up or help you or put people in your indie to help you deliver a successful show. I mean, we've done it before. I'm sure everybody else has too.
Catherine, how about you?
Yeah, and we work with indies of all all shapes and sizes. So and as Alf said, our email addresses are out there, so you can literally just email us. You can submit ideas on pitch, and we'll if there's something of interest in that top line, then of course we'll take that conversation from there. Equally, we're more than happy to spend some time talking to you about what it is exactly what we're looking for and the sort of nuance of that brief. We also have, if you are nations or regions indie, there are commissioners across the BBC who have a particular role on top of their day job in acting as a sort of liaison between those nations and regions and other commissioners. So there are lots of things in place to sort of help facilitate that conversation and to make sure as well that you are speaking to the right person for your idea.
Definitely. And how do you all like to be pitched? You know, what's the way that you prefer to receive pitches? Do you like a sizzle? Do you like just a top line? Do you need a full treatment? How's that for you, Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, look, start with for me and the Popular Factual team, look, just start with the top line on an email, and we can take the conversation from there, and always, you know, always put the thought on pitch as well, so then it's logged and everybody knows where it is.
And Hilary, how about you?
You know, people can email a top line. Sizzles are great. I always like watching things. It's telly. I always think that we spend too much time looking at far too many words in telly when it's actually a visual medium. But not everyone has a sizzle. You know, I mean, if somebody has a sizzle, that's brilliant. You're not disadvantaged if you don't. But seeing is believing to a degree. So anything with a sizzle, I'm probably going to look at more quickly than a document, which I'm going to read, if I'm being totally honest.
And Alf, how about you?
Yeah, I would. Don't mind. So a sentence is fine. A paragraph is fine. A sizzle is fine. You know, yeah, a 20-page document can be a bit terrifying. But if it comes with a suitably enticing covering email, then that's. It really doesn't matter. I mean, if it's something that needs unpacking and you've thought it through and can want to explain why it's brilliant, that's fine too. You know, whatever suits the idea.
Cool. And we've got a question come through on the Q&A as well, which is quite interesting. It's a development producer she's tuning in from Australia, called Lottie. Hi, Lottie. She says that the ability to film in Australia is a bit more welcomed over there than at the UK at the moment. And one of her shows has recently been co-commissioned. Are you looking for some more international set things or co-commissions at all at the moment? Catherine, if you wanted to start.
I mean, you know, I just say, look, it always starts with the idea, you know, just to echo, I think, what we've all been saying right the way through. So of course, you know, of course we're open to suggestion, but every conversation starts with the idea.
Hilary, how about you? Oh, I think Hilary might have frozen, so maybe while we wait for her to unfreeze, Alf, you take it away.
Look, yeah. Sorry, it depends. It does depend on the idea. I mean, flying to Australia just to film more easily, it would need something distinctive and, you know, more of a reason than just filming logistics. But I'm definitely open to it.
Brilliant. I'm not sure where Hilary's gone, so let's hope that she pops back soon. But we'll move on. And we also had a question from David Sankey from Yeti Television, who asked, what's your thoughts on talent at the moment and talent-led programming? Alf, if you wanted to start.
It's definitely a strand of what we do. In less sort of less volume than Catherine, but it's definitely something we're also always looking for. We had a very lovely piece last year with Bill Turnbull about his cancer diagnosis, and we had Kathy Burke's sort of wonderful exploration of the world of women, and we have others in the pipeline, or I suppose to some extent you think of Ed's piece on homelessness, but that was rather more extreme probably than most presenters would want to go. But yeah, I mean, if you have access to or a relationship with people who would draw an audience, we're always interested to hear about it, definitely.
And in terms of talent, how often is it that someone comes to you with talent and they want to work an idea around, or how often is it that people come with an idea and you think, let's put some talent with this?
It's usually the latter, and that's fine. It's rare that people come with talent to me, but I don't know about Catherine. But having said that, when they do, equally is great, because it's like if you have someone who wants to do something with you, and you can shape it around them and with them and evolve it with them, that's also that can also be really good.
Catherine, I know Alf said that you do quite a lot of talent.
Yeah, I mean, we do quite a range. So be it, you know, the single docs of BBC 1 and 3, like the Joey Essex doc we've got coming, or Freddie, or, you know, whether it's bigger passion projects like Idris's Fight Club, or then even thinking about things where you know, the Sarah Pascoe travelogues and the Romeshes and things like that. So we do a really big range. I think increasingly there's a shift, particularly with our slate on BBC Two, moving to an entertainment performance in the heart of things, which we've been doing for a while now and has been paying off. So we've got Interior Design Masters filming with Alan Carr at the moment, which is just completely joyous. I think, you know, we are interested in being surprised by talent suggestions. I think, you know, quite often, you know, as Alf said, you know, it's less usual that someone comes to us with talent and we build an idea around them. But, you know, again, we're always open to the conversation, and I think it's just, you know, again, just surprise us really.
Interesting. And I think, has Hilary come back? Are you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. You're back. Yay.
I'm so sorry. I literally have catastrophic. Well, I've had 2 teenagers in here trying to do this thing.
No worries. I think that.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Anyway.
One of the perks of working from home and lockdown and all of that. Not. So we were just talking about talent and kind of what your thoughts are on talent-led shows and what you're looking for with talent-led shows.
We're hugely opportunistic. So if somebody fantastic wants to come and do a show for us, we're all ears, and we always work very closely with talent to develop the ideas that they're most keen to do. And we work with comedians, and we work with presenters, and we work with. We're avaricious to have the best people on the channels doing the best and, you know, most exciting stuff. And we've just recommissioned Stacey Dooley's series for W. Stacey Dooley Sleeps Over, and actually, to the earlier point about filming in times of COVID, she has been sleeping over. She's already shot a couple of episodes, staying over with strangers. And we, you know, at the beginning of lockdown, I just wondered whether that would ever be possible again. So all things are possible, and all talent. Talent is a shortcut for the audience. You know, the audience understand talent, what they bring, and the sort of tone of a show that they might deliver. So interested in all talent ideas across all the channels, please.
No. And we've got a couple of other questions as well. One from BBC Studios, which is, would a second lockdown, which who knows if we are on the cusp of that or not, change your commissioning needs at all? Sorry to bring us back into the COVID.
Would it change our commissioning needs? No, because I just think people are just desperate for escapism and just desperate for a slab of joy, and all I want to do is just make TV that makes people feel a tiny bit better about the world. So that tonally will remain the same. I mean, obviously it's going to put more restrictions on the hows and the whys and how we do it and all the rest of it, but you know, we've worked around it before, so we will continue to work around it again.
Same really. I mean, yeah, just trying to mitigate its effects as much as possible. And, you know, we haven't sort of commissioned a Factent sort of COVID show, and I don't think we're planning to.
How about you, Hilary?
It won't affect what we commission. It will affect how people make shows, and that's the issue.
That's a good line. And I've got another question for you guys, obviously. What are you not looking for at the minute? What would you, if it turned up in your inbox, you would not like to see?
Just messaging my son, asking him to turn down the TV. I mean, it's like I'm just trying to do a big Zoom. So what are we not looking for? So I think probably, you know, we have got enough sort of lovely food content at the moment, in terms of, you know, our Mary Berries and our Nadias and Nigellas are coming. I think we're probably all right on the craft front as well. So you know, yes, we want competition. Yes, we're always interested in looking at new territories within competition, but possibly we're leaning more towards thinking about when competition meets documentary in a sort of race across the world style way, rather than thinking more about sort of skill-shaped things in the manner of a sewing bee. But, you know, never say never, obviously. But I think that's probably the direction into which we're leaning.
How about you, Hilary?
We don't commission reality, and we don't really commission open-ended competition shows, so closed-ended competitions, if it's to be a competition.
Cool. And Alf?
There's nothing. I'm afraid there's nothing off the table. But look, I mean, the onus is to prove that this show is fresh or distinctive. So I mean, I wouldn't say no. As I said earlier, if you take food, like that is quite hard to come up with a new food show that feels different and does something that nobody else is doing. Having said that, if somebody does it, of course you'd be interested. So it's more about trying to think what feels underserved, what feels like it would be a fresh adventure or a fresh foray into some new territory, or a fresh twist on a familiar territory. It's just finding something that feels new and distinctive, but it could kind of come from anywhere, which is one of the the hard things in a way sometimes, but also the joy of it.
And we have a question for you, Catherine, from Sophie from Waddell Media. And she asks if you could go into a little more detail on your reality needs for BBC Three.
Yes. So we are thinking very much, obviously, about the 16 to 24-year-old audience. I think it's about thinking about worlds where we reflect their lives back to them authentically and in a way that feels really positive and upbeat. A lot of the time, it's sort of almost easier to say sort of what it's not than what it is. A lot of the time we get pitched formats that feel like they could quite happily sit on BBC One or BBC Two, and they've just happened to have been cast with younger people in them, and that's not what we're after. I think if you look at something like Rap Game, it just felt sort of totally and utterly of BBC Three, and it couldn't have sat anywhere else across our network. And so I think it really is thinking about those worlds that feel really important and authentic to that 16 to 24-year-old audience. And we're interested in thinking about things like what does well-being mean to them, what does what's work looking like, all lots of sort of different territories within that, but it needs to feel uniquely of that demographic.
Cool, thank you. And we've got kind of 10 minutes left or so, so if you've got any more questions for the panel, please do submit them in. We've had some really great ones, so please keep going. But I'm going to ask you a question that I have had commissioners say, no, I don't think I can answer that before, but it's kind of more of a bit of fun. So if you could open your laptops tomorrow morning, on your email is your dream pitch, what is the shape of that? What would that look like?
Well, I know how it would make me feel. I mean, sometimes I see ideas so much that I like so much that I feel sick. So I like that's how I want them to make me feel. I mean, it's just, look, I think where things do the best for our department is when people bring us things and the opening sentence is, no, we weren't sure whether this was BBC or not. And then that usually ends up being quite a good conversation. So that I'd sort of suggest that, really.
How about you, Hilary?
Really hard one, isn't it? It's funny, Catherine, you say ideas that make you feel sick. It's visceral. I mean, it's totally visceral. It's just something that you see it, and actually your first response is, I think my first response is, oh my God, I love this. And then I have the terror of thinking, have they pitched it everywhere else? Is there any way they're going to make this for us? Can we have this show? This feels absolutely brilliant. That's a good feeling. It's off, yeah. I mean, something that just makes you feel excited about the fact that you work in telly, because there are some bad days, and I've been doing it for quite a long time, so that feels like a really good day. I can't say specifically what the idea is, I'm afraid, because that's the joy of the idea. I can think of some people who I would be completely overexcited to work with, but that's different.
Can you name any names? Who are those people?
I said at Edinburgh a year or so ago, I said, bring me Adele. Somebody like that, obviously that would be like a dream. Someone like that would be absolutely someone who I'm personally fascinated by, and I think the audience absolutely love and adore. But I'll leave it up to all those brilliant people watching this to figure out who that person is.
Brilliant. And how about you, Alf?
Well, it's always very exciting when you read an idea that you've never heard or had before, and it's obviously then doubly exciting when it feels like it could be an idea that more than a few people might be interested in. And so that combination, basically.
Exciting. Right, and we just had a few more questions last minute come through. So Alex, I'm not going to pronounce your surname because I don't want to embarrass myself because I don't know how you pronounce it, has said, how are you feeling about pre-shot series that are searching for post-production funding? Are you more open to these in a time of COVID? Alf, maybe if you wanted to start. Although you look...
I would say to the extent that we're looking always extra emphasis on bargains, yes, but I mean at the same time it'd have to feel like a Channel 4 fact 10 show fundamentally. So if it doesn't, then COVID would not help its cause, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Perfect. And Hilary, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have a big acquisitions team who go out buying shows because our economy is mixed, you know, with original shows and acquisitions. So there are definitely people who can take part in that conversation, but all the content has to feel right for the channels. But having said that, we've got quite a lot of channels, so it just depends on the show. It always depends on the show. The model is neither a sort of plus or a minus. Things that feel very good value financially are of interest, but that won't be the primary move on a show.
And Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are opportunities. It wouldn't necessarily be through our department, but yeah, I mean, there are opportunities that particularly earlier peak.
Cool. And I don't think we've had any more questions. So I think we might wrap up here, but I would just like to finish with the question that we ask everyone as at the end of our Commissioning Conversations podcast, which is, what are you all watching right now? What are you loving on TV?
The Last Dance. I'm on episode 9. Bit behind, but catching up. But it's, you know, the amount of detail is so mind-boggling, I have to say. Hats off to whoever. And some Netflix docs feel like they should be 2 episodes stretched to 8, but I have to say this one does feel right at 10, so I'm loving that.
Selling Sunset, I am obsessed. Absolutely obsessed.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm Money Heist. Really enjoying Money Heist at the moment. I'm really looking forward to watching Bake Off. I missed it last night because that is one of my favourite shows on TV. So definitely, I will definitely be watching that tonight.
Lovely. Well, I'd just like to thank you all so much for joining me today, and say a big thank you. It's been a really nice chat. And I also just want to remind everyone listening that if you are interested in subscribing to CI or purchasing the report, you can do so now at the link that's being reposted in the chat. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.